I should have recognized the signs. That single thought consumed me as I stared at the will. It wasn't unveiled in a dramatic family gathering or during a tearful confession. No, I found it by complete chance. I was at my parents' house, the same one I'd been helping them keep up for the past 5 years. I paid the bills, managed repairs, and kept the pantry full. I had been their reliable support for so long, it felt like an automatic part of my life. That afternoon, I was assisting my mother, Margaret, with some old paperwork. She struggled with technology, so scanning documents for her was a regular favor I performed. But when I found a folder marked estate plan and last will, my curiosity won. I tried to convince myself I was just being thorough, not snooping. The moment I opened it, however, my stomach plummeted. Everything, and I mean absolutely all of it, was designated to Megan. Megan, my sister, who had never bothered to help with anything. The same Megan who drifted between hobbies with no sense of purpose while I worked tirelessly to ensure our parents were secure. And me? I wasn't mentioned at all, unless you count a hollow phrase about how they love both of our children equally. What a joke. Nothing says equality like bequeathing the entire family fortune to one child and leaving the other with, what, fond memories. I sat there, my hands clenched so hard around the paper that my knuckles were white. Was this their plan all along? To use me as a financial prop while Megan was rewarded for her idleness? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Tom, what's taking you so long in there? My mother's voice called, pulling me from my daze. I didn't try to hide the document. I stood up, will in hand, and marched into the living room where Margaret and my dad, Henry, were sipping tea as if it were any other day. So this is how it is, I stated, my voice eerily steady. Margaret's eyes grew wide when she saw the papers I was holding. Henry placed his teacup down with a sigh, as if bracing for a minor annoyance. Tom, my boy, it's not what it seems. My jaw tightened. It seems perfectly clear to me, I retorted, my voice gaining an edge. After everything I've done for you, for all these years. Megan gets everything. My father's expression was impossible to read, but my mother attempted to defuse the situation. Tom, sweetheart, you don't need it. You're so independent. Megan, well, she has her struggles. We just wanted to be certain she's provided for. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Provided for? She wasn't a helpless kid, she was a 28-year-old woman who was perfectly capable, just lazy. Is that your justification? My voice was just above a whisper, but it carried immense weight. Margaret started to say something else, but I had heard enough. I get it, I said, putting the will back on the table. Good to know where I stand. I turned and walked toward the door, ignoring their calls. They will see their error. That's what I kept telling myself that first week. I thought they might grasp how unfair they had been, that they'd call to apologize, and we could have a genuine discussion. But as the days stretched into a profound silence, I understood. They had no intention of apologizing. They weren't even going to bring it up. I never returned to their house after that day. I didn't text or call, I just went dark. And they didn't even seem to notice. Not for 2 weeks. I thought perhaps they would be concerned. But when I finally did hear from them, it wasn't a worried, "How are you, Tom?" or a weak, "We should talk." Instead, I received a cold, businesslike text from my dad, "The mortgage payment is due. Can you send the funds by Friday?" I almost laughed out loud. Truly. After all that, they still expected me to pay their bills as if nothing had changed, like I was some personal cash machine they could draw from at will. I looked at the text for a long time before typing my response. "I'm sure Megan can take care of it, since the house will be hers." I sent the message and threw my phone on the sofa. I was finished. The lifeline was cut. The quiet that followed was absolute. A few hours later, a text from my mom arrived. "Tom, don't act like this. We have to talk." So, now they wanted to talk. I ignored it. Another day went by, then another. Then Megan chimed in. Her text arrived late one night, and just seeing her name on my screen made my anger flare. "Tom, you're being absurd. It isn't a big deal. Just help them like you always have. Not a big deal. She genuinely acted as if I had no reason to be angry about being completely cut out of the will. I replied, no, I think you have it handled, since you're the one they put all their trust in. A silence. A few minutes passed before another message appeared. OMG, are you really this mad about that? It's only money, Tom. Be mature, only money. It was easy for her to say now that it was all going to be hers. Then you won't have a problem using some of that money for their bills, will you? No answer. Of course. Just a cold void. The days crawled by, and the silence deepened. I should have been feeling guilty, but I felt nothing of the sort. For the first time in years, I wasn't contorting my life to keep everyone else stable. I had given up so much, my time, my energy, my own financial security, while Megan did nothing and collected all the benefits. And they expected me to continue? No. I had spent years prioritizing their needs over my own. It was time to prioritize myself. A week later, my mother tried again, this time with a call. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was just as I expected, soft, pleading, and dripping with guilt. Tom, honey, please. We are family. We don't abandon each other. Family. It was funny how they only invoked that word when they were in need. Then came the guilt trip. We gave you so much growing up. We just need a little assistance while we get things sorted. I rolled my eyes. Sorted? They had more than enough time to sort things out before they decided to betray me. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. Next up was Megan, the queen of entitlement. The following night, another text from her appeared. Just call them. You're being so melodramatic. That was rich, coming from the person who did nothing while I shouldered the family's burdens. You mean like how you were so communicative about inheriting everything from me? I typed back. Her reply was utterly predictable. Are you seriously going to let them lose the house over this? You're unbelievable. Not my issue, I replied. It's yours now. I felt no guilt whatsoever. The silence returned until one morning I awoke to a notification that made my jaw clench. A bank transfer request for $3,500 from my mom. There was no message, no explanation, just a bold, shameless request for the precise amount of the mortgage. They had stopped asking and were now making demands. I rejected it instantly. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I sent it to voicemail. A text followed. Tom, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? I stared at the message for a second, then wrote back, because it's not my responsibility anymore. Ask Megan. I sent it and didn't look back. They made their decision. Now they could deal with it. After I sent that final message, a deep quiet set in. Days went by with no calls, no texts, nothing. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a sense of peace. No more requests for money, no more guilt trips, no more frantic calls about emergencies that would vanish as soon as I paid a bill. I could finally relax. But I knew this calm wouldn't last. My parents, Margaret and Henry, had depended on me for so long they were incapable of functioning on their own. And Megan? She was accustomed to having everything given to her. She didn't have the first clue about real responsibility. So, I waited. And, just as I predicted, the facade began to crumble. 2 weeks later, the sign started small. Margaret called one of my friends, Lucas, asking if he'd heard from me. He recounted the conversation to me the next day with a bit too much amusement. She's acting like you fell off the map. I might as well have, I replied with a sigh. Then Henry began calling my office, just to check in. Right. The receptionist, Olivia, had to approach my desk twice that week with a pained "Your dad called again" look. I eventually told her to just screen all my calls. But the real kicker was Megan. Hey Tom, her text appeared one afternoon as if nothing had happened. Can you help me with the utilities? I'm not sure how to set up the online accounts. Was she for real? This was the woman who inherited an entire estate but couldn't manage to pay a simple bill. "Figure it out, Megan," I texted back. No reply. By the end of the month, their situation had deteriorated. I heard from Ben, one of their neighbors, that the mortgage was still unpaid. Apparently, foreclosure notices were starting to accumulate. They're in a panic, Ben mentioned when we crossed paths at the grocery store. "Your mom asked me if I knew a good real estate agent." The real estate agent. So they were already considering selling the house. Good. They made their bed, they could lie in it. It took another week for Megan to finally break. I was at home, enjoying a quiet Saturday morning with coffee and a novel, when my phone buzzed. It was Megan. I was tempted to ignore it, but I was curious. "Tom, WTF is going on?" I smirked into my coffee cup. "What do you mean?" "Mom and Dad are losing the house." Ah, there it was. "Maybe you should use some of that inheritance money to solve the problem," I typed, keeping my tone casual and distant. "You know I can't access that," she replied immediately. "That money is in long-term investments. I can't touch it without huge penalties." "Not my problem," I said, adding a shrug emoji for good measure. A few days after Megan's meltdown, I received another text, this time from Margaret. "Tom, we have to talk." I ignored it. Then another. "Please, it's urgent." Still, I ignored it. But when the messages kept coming, "We're going to lose the house, we don't know what to do, please, Tom, we need you," I finally decided to act. I wasn't without a heart, I just needed them to feel the full gravity of their decision. So, I called. Margaret picked up on the first ring. "Tom." "Oh, thank God, what's the matter?" I asked, though I already knew. We're in real trouble," she said, her voice trembling. "The mortgage is overdue, and we don't have the money. We didn't think things would get this bad." "What about Megan?" I asked, again, already knowing the answer. She can't help," Margaret mumbled, her voice faint. "Of course, she can't." "So now you call me," I stated, my voice calm but firm. "After everything, we didn't intend for it to be like this, Tom," she whispered. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "I told you this would happen," I said softly. "But you chose not to listen." For a moment, there was just silence. Then Henry's voice came on the line. "Tom, we just need a bit of help." "Just to get us through this, a bit of help," I repeated, a bitter laugh building in my throat. "I've been giving you a bit of help for years." "And what did it get me?" "We didn't know." "You knew," I cut in, my voice now ice cold. "You just didn't care when it was convenient for you." A silence. "You chose Megan," I continued, my words cutting through the quiet. "Now she can clean up the mess you made." She's not prepared for this kind of responsibility," Margaret said softly. "And I was?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "When I was paying your bills and keeping this family together." I shook my head, though they couldn't see. "I'm finished," I stated firmly. "You made your decision. Now you have to live with it." The next day, Megan appeared at my apartment. I had just returned from work when I saw her on my doorstep, looking completely disheveled. "Tom," she said, her voice shaking. "What are you doing here, Megan?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Please," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what to do. They're going to lose everything." I just stared at her, feeling nothing, no anger, no pity, just a profound emptiness. "That's not my problem," I said quietly. Her face fell. "Tom, please, I can't handle this," she whispered. "Then maybe you should have considered that before you decided to take everything," I replied softly, my voice filled with a quiet finality. I stepped back and closed the door on her. Walking back into my apartment, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I had carried my family's burdens. Not anymore. They had made their choice, and now they were left to pick up the pieces. I knew they wouldn't give up. Ignoring their calls, blocking their numbers, even refusing to answer the door when Megan appeared, none of it mattered. They were not going to relent. A part of me hoped they would get the message, that weeks of fending for themselves would make them understand. But desperation changes people, and my family was in deep. The confrontation happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I had just finished a long day of teaching and was looking forward to going home, changing, and relaxing with a glass of wine. But as I entered the parking lot of my apartment building, I saw them, Margaret, Henry, and Megan, all three standing outside like some kind of dysfunctional intervention. "You have to be joking," I muttered, gripping my steering wheel until my knuckles were white. For a second, I thought about just driving away, but I was done running. If they wanted a confrontation, they were going to get one. I parked my car, got out, and walked toward them with a determined stride. The closer I got, the more I could see the desperation in their eyes. "Good. Let them feel it." "Tom," Margaret began, her voice overly sweet, as if she hadn't ignored me for weeks. "Mom," I said flatly, stopping a few feet from them. Megan stood to the side, arms crossed, her gaze shifting between me and our parents. She tried to look bored, but I could see the panic beneath the surface. Henry spoke first. "Tom, we have to talk," he said, his tone strained. "About what?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "The will? The fact that you cut me out completely after I single-handedly kept this family solvent for years? Or maybe how you only seem to remember I exist when you need money?" Margaret's face turned red. "Sweetheart, it's not like that. Oh, really?" I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Because from my perspective, it looks exactly like that. Henry's voice softened, almost pleading. "We're about to lose the house. We just need a little help to get through this difficult time, a difficult time." My jaw tightened. Did they think I was that gullible? "A little help," I echoed, crossing my arms. "I gave you a little help for years. And what was my reward?" Margaret looked at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Tom," she whispered. "But you did," I said, my voice steady despite the pain underneath. "You didn't just hurt me. You erased me." Margaret's voice broke. We thought you would understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, my patience gone. "That I was good enough to pay your bills but not good enough to be considered part of this family." That's when Megan finally spoke up. "Oh my God, Tom, can you just stop?" she huffed, rolling her eyes as if this was all a major inconvenience for her. "You're blowing this completely out of proportion." I turned my gaze to her, my eyes narrowing. "Out of proportion?" she scoffed, crossing her arms tighter. "It's just money. Why are you acting like this is the end of the world?" "Just money." That was always Megan's perspective. "If it's just money," I said, my tone like ice, "then why don't you use some of yours to fix this?" Her face went blank. I can't." "Why not?" I pushed. "Because it's tied up in investments," she stammered, now avoiding my gaze. "Investments," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "How convenient." I took a step closer, making sure they all heard me clearly. "You made your decision," I said, my voice unwavering. "You left me out. You gave everything to Megan. And now that it's all collapsing, you expect me to come and save you." Henry shifted his weight. "Tom, please, no," I cut him off firmly. "I am done. I spent years cleaning up your messes. I sacrificed my time, my money, and my sanity to make sure you were okay. And what did I get for it? Silence." "Nothing," I continued, my voice softer but no less pointed. "Not even a thank you." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't know how to fix it, Tom." "Then maybe," I said, taking a deep breath, "you should have thought about that before you chose Megan over me." "We're family," Margaret whispered, her voice cracking. "Family," I repeated, feeling the sting of the word. It's funny how that word only matters when you need something. I looked at Megan, who was still standing there, arms crossed, her face flushed. "You wanted it all, Megan." I asked, my voice calm but sharp. Well, now you have it. Congratulations. Her eyes widened, her confidence finally shattering. Tom, Henry tried again, but I held up a hand. No, I said softly. You made your choice. Now live with it. I turned to leave, but Margaret's voice called out one last time. Tom, please. Goodbye, Mom, and with that, I walked away. As I went back to my apartment, I felt lighter. Years of resentment, of being taken for granted, of sacrificing my own life for people who didn't appreciate it, it was all gone. I owed them nothing. They made their choice, and now they would have to live with it. Walking away should have been the final chapter. I thought that once I closed that door, both literally and figuratively, I would be free. I had stated my position, made it clear I was no longer their safety net, and left them to their self-made disaster. But I had underestimated them. Margaret, Henry, and Meghan were not about to accept defeat. Instead, they took things to a new, pathetic level. A week after our confrontation, I began to see some interesting posts on Facebook. It started with subtle things, like posts about family values and how real family sticks together. Classic manipulation. I ignored it. But then, the posts got more personal. Margaret, it's devastating when your own child abandons you after everything you've given them. We never imagined this kind of betrayal. Henry, we gave him everything, and now he has left us in our time of need. And Meghan, she was the worst. Meghan, some people only care about money. They forget what family truly means. They were trying to paint me as the villain, as if I had abandoned them without reason. They wanted to play dirty. Fine. I refused to let them control the story. So, I took to social media myself. I didn't write a vague, passive-aggressive jab. I laid out the facts. Since my family has chosen to broadcast our private matters online, I feel it's only right to set the record straight. For years, I was the one keeping things afloat, paying the mortgage, buying groceries, handling repairs, while Meghan contributed nothing. When I discovered my parents had left everything to her in their will, I walked away. Not because I'm selfish, but because I was tired of being used. And now, they have the audacity to portray me as the bad guy. I don't think so. I attached screenshots of their texts asking for money, copies of receipts for the bills I had paid, and yes, a clear photo of the will. Let them try to spin that. The response was overwhelming and immediate. Comments poured in from friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives. And they were all on my side. Wow, Tom, I had no idea you were dealing with all that. You've been so good to them, unbelievable. They took advantage of you and then tried to guilt-trip you. Meghan gets everything and still expects you to solve her problems. Nope. They can deal with this. Even people who had been close to my parents started to question them. I always knew Meghan was spoiled, but this is something else. It was liberating. For the first time, people saw the truth. And then, there was silence. The posts from my family stopped. Margaret and Henry went completely dark online. No more guilt-inducing Facebook statuses, no more passive-aggressive messages. And Meghan? Not a peep. I could only guess at the chaos erupting behind the scenes. Their carefully crafted image had been shattered. Now they had to face the reality. With the drama finally over, I did something I hadn't done in years. I focused on myself. I dedicated myself to my work, took on exciting new projects, and even enrolled in an evening photography class I'd always been interested in. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with, Lucas, Olivia, and some college buddies who had been trying to get me to hang out for ages. And for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. No more worrying about frantic late-night calls for money. No more stress about their mortgage. Just me, living my own life. Of course, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about how things were going for them. Ben, my neighbor, an unofficial informant, kept me in the loop. The house is on the market, he told me one afternoon at the coffee shop. They're desperate. Looks like they're trying to downsizing. Interesting. And Meghan? I asked, mostly out of curiosity. Last I heard, she moved back in with them, Ben said, shaking his head. Guess those investments didn't work out. Ukama has a funny way of finding people. I didn't hear from Megan directly, but I wasn't shocked when I got a text from Lucas a few weeks later. Guess who just slid into my DMs? I didn't even need to ask. Megan? Yep, he replied with a laughing emoji. Apparently, she was asking for advice on finding a better paying job. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I wasn't bitter. I didn't waste my days hoping for their downfall. But I was never going back. They had shown me their true colors, and I had finally believed them. Family takes care of each other, Margaret had said during that last confrontation. And maybe that's true. But family also has to respect each other. They don't use, manipulate, and then cast aside the people who care for them. I deserved better than that. A few months later, I stood on my balcony, watching the sunset with a glass of wine. I was free. Free from the weight of their expectations, from the constant guilt and manipulation. For the first time in years, my life was truly my own, and I wasn't going to waste another minute of it. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. I never imagined that the two people I trusted most would be the ones to betray me. It's strange how life can pull the rug out from under you when you're not looking. For me, it all began when Lucas, my best friend since college, offered to manage the hotel reservations for my wedding weekend. You have enough on your plate, man. Let me handle this, he said with his typical relaxed smile. He even showed me the confirmation emails on his phone. Everything looked legitimate. I didn't give it a second thought. Why would I? Lucas had always been my support system. Through bad breakups, career setbacks, and family issues, he was always there. Perhaps, in hindsight, a little too there. I was too preoccupied with my job and last-minute wedding arrangements to see how much time my fiancée, Maddie, and Lucas were spending together. They were planning details, visiting venues, and tasting cake samples, tasks I had little patience for. Maddie claimed it was just easier that way since Lucas had such great taste. And I took her at her word. I trusted them both completely. The night before the wedding, something felt wrong. We were at the rehearsal dinner after party, and Maddie was nowhere to be seen. I sent her a text. Maddie needed some air. Just clearing my head, I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters, but an uneasy feeling settled in. I tried to call her, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I realized Lucas was also missing. Someone suggested he had probably gone for more drinks, but his car was gone from the parking lot. A knot formed in my stomach. I opened Instagram, thinking maybe Maddie had posted something to take her mind off things. That's when I saw it. A story, visible for less than a second before it was deleted, but not before I saw the hotel room number in the background, room 1027. I recognized that number because Lucas had booked our block of rooms, making sure he was in the same building as us. My heart hammered against my ribs as I rode the elevator up. My mind was screaming at me to turn back, to pretend I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. Lucas had given me a spare key card earlier, just in case. The card slid into the lock, and the light turned green. What I saw next is seared into my memory forever: Maddie and Lucas, tangled in the sheets, clothes strewn across the floor. They were so absorbed they didn't even notice me enter. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just stood there, phone in hand, taking pictures. Evidence. Lucas saw me first. And his reaction? He smirked. She was never really yours, Jake, he said, reaching for his own phone. Want to see how long this has been going on? Maddie was sobbing, clutching the sheets as if they could somehow undo what she'd done. Jake, please, I can explain. Save it, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. Keep the ring. It's a fake anyway. It wasn't, but the look on her face when she heard that lie was worth it. Lucas laughed, ever the cocky one. This is why she needed more. Someone who could actually, you know what's funny, Lucas? I cut him off, my voice sharper now. You just lost your job, and you don't even realize it yet. His smirk vanished. We worked for the same corporation, in different departments, but I had everything: screenshots of his inappropriate messages, proof of him stealing credit for his team's work, and a record of all the favors he'd cashed in. He thought he was untouchable. "You're bluffing," he muttered, but I saw the fear in his eyes. I leaned forward, smiling a smile that promised trouble. "Remember that project you got a bonus for last quarter? Elsie, your direct report, kept all the records." Every single 1 inch. His face turned ashen. "Oh, and by the way," I said, pulling out my phone, "I just sent some screenshots to Odette. You know, your fiancée? The one you're marrying next month." The color drained from his face. Maddie was now staring at him, her eyes wide. "You're engaged." I left them to their argument, walked out with composure, and called my parents on the way down. "The wedding is off. I'll explain later." Then I drove to the 24-hour diner where Lucas and I used to cram for exams in college. I ordered a black coffee, opened my laptop, and started composing emails. HR was in for a very interesting morning. It's been 5 days since that night, and the aftermath has been deeply satisfying. The wedding was cancelled. The vendors were surprisingly understanding when they learned the bride had cheated with the best man. I got 60% of my deposits back. For those who weren't so accommodating, their Yelp pages are about to get some detailed reviews. Maddie has been flooding my phone, first with apologies, then with accusations. "You never had time for me," followed by, "I made a mistake, I haven't blocked her. I'm just letting the messages accumulate. They might come in handy." "And Lucas?" He's been completely silent, because he knows what's coming. Monday morning, I was at the office by 6 a.m. for a 7 a.m. meeting with HR. I didn't just bring receipts, I brought a full dossier. Every inappropriate email, every stolen idea, every time he blamed a junior employee for his own errors. By 9 a.m., Lucas was summoned to an emergency meeting. By 11, he was being escorted out of the building with a cardboard box. But that wasn't even the best part. When I told Odette everything, she didn't cry or scream. She just smiled. "I think it's time Lucas learned that actions have consequences," she said. And she meant it. You know that feeling when you tip over a line of dominoes? That quiet anticipation before everything comes crashing down? That's where I was. Monday morning was only the start. By the time Lucas understood what had hit him, the damage was irreversible. I arrived at the office early, got a coffee, and sat down in the conference room I had booked for my meeting with HR. I wasn't anxious, I was resolved. Every email, every message where Lucas had claimed credit for someone else's work was organized in a neat folder on my laptop. Elsie, his former direct report, had been waiting for this. She had provided timestamps, forwarded emails, and even Slack messages where he had pressured junior staff to cover for his mistakes. "This is extensive," the HR representative said, scrolling through the files. "And there's more," I added, placing printed copies on the table for emphasis. "He has been manipulating his team for months." At 9 a.m., Lucas was called in. I wasn't present for that meeting, but news travels fast in the tech world. He walked in thinking it was a routine project update and walked out 2 hours later with a security escort and a box containing his desk junk, a protein shaker, a small cactus, the usual. "Dude's finished," one of my co-workers texted me. "HR is talking about legal action. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy." And then there was Odette. When I met her for coffee after the initial fallout, I anticipated tears or anger. But Odette was cool and composed. "I had my suspicions," she said, stirring her latte. "Lucas always had excuses for working late. But I never had proof. Well, she had it now. And she wasn't going to let it go. I want to help," she said, her eyes narrowing. "He needs to feel the full impact of this," and she delivered. Odette worked in marketing for one of our largest clients and had access to internal communications, including emails from Lucas where he had tried to hit on one of her colleagues 6 months prior. That same colleague was mysteriously reassigned after she rejected him. I think it's time the executive saw these, Odette said with a razor-sharp smile. 2 days later, those emails were in the inboxes of our client's top leadership. Just like that, Lucas had torched his last professional bridge. "Jake, you didn't have to go this far," Maddie texted after she found out. "He's lost everything." "You're right," I replied. "He did that all on his own." I blocked her. Maddie, oh, Maddie. She thought she would land on her feet, that Lucas would be her safety net after I was gone. Except Lucas's net was gone too. When Odette broke up with him, very publicly, Maddie was left adrift. She called and texted incessantly. "We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake." A mistake is an understatement. I didn't reply. But here's the twist, Maddie wasn't just losing me, she was losing everything. She and I worked at the same company, different departments, but under the same monitored email system. And she had used her work email to coordinate her trysts with Lucas. HR flagged it. Someone reported inappropriate use of company resources. By the time they investigated, Maddie was facing an administrative review. "Jake, please," she texted after getting the news. "They're talking about suspension." Did I feel sorry for her? No. "You did this to yourself," I replied. I wasn't being vindictive, I was just done. Meanwhile, Odette was only getting started. She contacted me again after her meeting with Lucas's former manager. "They're reviewing all his past projects," she said. Apparently, a lot of his submitted work looked suspiciously familiar. Familiar was putting it mildly. Lucas had been inflating his portfolio with other people's work, including code he'd lifted from public GitHub repositories. That discovery was now making its way up the corporate ladder. "He won't be working in this industry again anytime soon," Odette added. As if things weren't bad enough for Lucas, word had spread among our friends. I wasn't the only one he'd betrayed. "Eli, dude, Lucas hit on my girlfriend last year." "Mark, he borrowed $500 from me and never paid it back." "Josh, remember when he sabotaged my project?" I knew that was him. It turned out Lucas had been taking advantage of everyone for years. I was just the final straw. "We're done with him," Josh declared in our group chat. His out of our friend group had officially excommunicated him. Lucas was a pariah. The best part was, Lucas didn't even know the full extent of his ruin yet. I hadn't told him that Odette wasn't just forwarding emails, she was speaking with the company's legal team, who were now investigating how many of his projects were built on plagiarized code. But here's where it gets even better. Lucas had just moved into a luxurious high-rise apartment, all part of the successful tech bro image he cultivated. The problem? Odette had co-signed the lease. When she ended their engagement, she also removed her name from that lease. Lucas had 30 days to vacate. "Enjoy the basement, Lucas," I muttered to myself when I heard the news. As for Maddie, her review didn't go well. Using company resources for secret hookups is not something HR overlooks. She was placed on unpaid administrative leave. Her apartment lease? She couldn't afford it on her own. "Jake, I need to talk to you." "Please." "Nope." "Jake, I'm scared." "I messed up." "Not my problem." "Jake, can we just meet?" I blocked her. By the end of the week, Maddie was back at her sister's house, and Lucas was crashing at his mom's. And me? I was thriving. I had dinner with my parents, who were incredibly relieved the wedding was off. I started going to the gym again. I even began talking to someone new, Rain. We'd met a while back, but I was too consumed with wedding planning to notice. Now, we were texting frequently. Lucas and Maddie were learning what it felt like to lose everything they had taken for granted. But the final act was still to come. It's strange how life works. You think a story has reached its conclusion, but then one last twist appears, just to remind you who's in charge. For Lucas and Maddie, that twist was a sharp one. The last time I saw Lucas, he was still deluding himself into thinking he could recover. I ran into him at a new burger joint downtown. I was there with Rain. Yes, That Rain. We'd been seeing each other for a couple of months, and things were going great. She has this calm energy but is incredibly sharp, a single mom with 2 kids who loves hiking and can beat me at Mario Kart. Basically, she's everything Maddie wasn't. Anyway, Rain wanted to change her order, so I went up to the counter. That's when I saw him. Lucas, in a grease-stained uniform and a paper hat, bagging fries as if his life depended on it. I almost didn't recognize him. But when our eyes met, he knew exactly who I was. "Can I talk to you?" he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. His voice was a faint whisper. I glanced at Rain, who raised an eyebrow but nodded. 5 minutes we went outside, around the corner, where he lit a cigarette with trembling hands. He took a long drag before speaking. "You ruined my life," he said, his voice thick with resentment. I just stood there, arms crossed, letting him vent. "I lost my job, my apartment, my friends. Odette won't even speak to me. And Maddie, she's gone too. All because of you." I let his words hang in the air before I replied. "No, Lucas," I said, my tone calm but firm. "You did this to yourself." He opened his mouth to argue, but I stopped him. "You slept with my fiancée. You lied to your own fiancée. You stole credit for other people's work. And you expect me to feel sorry that your life imploded? Jake, come on, man." I was drunk. "It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I scoffed. "Lucas, that wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, and you made it repeatedly." His face went slack. "Look," I said, my voice a bit softer, "I'm not here to gloat. But don't stand here and act like I'm the villain." I pulled out my phone and found a screenshot. Recognize this? It was Maddie's Instagram. She was back in her hometown, working at her father's hardware store, with a caption, "Rebuilding and finding myself." "Your soulmate is really living her best life, huh?" I added, a little too sweetly. Lucas's face paled. "By the way," I continued, "she told everyone you pressured her into it. Said it was all your idea. She even told your mom that his cigarette dangled from his lips as he stood frozen. But hey," I added, putting my phone away, "at least you have fries." Just then, life threw in another surprise. See, I wasn't the only one who had spotted Lucas. Remember Odette? She had moved on. And her new boyfriend? Maurice, a big guy who used to work security at our old office. And Maurice just happened to be inside the restaurant. "Everything okay out here?" Lucas's face went white when he saw Maurice step outside, arms crossed, looking like someone you don't mess with. "Yeah, we're good," I said with a smirk. Just catching up. Lucas crushed his cigarette under his boot and mumbled something about getting back to work. He scurried inside. But Karma wasn't finished. I thought I was done with Maddie, but a week after my encounter with Lucas, she showed up at my apartment, uninvited. It was raining, and I was about to leave with Rain and her kids when I heard the knock. "Jake, please, can we talk?" She looked terrible, puffy eyes, messy hair, as if life had been relentlessly hard on her. "There's nothing to talk about, Maddie," I said, keeping my voice even. "Please," she begged. "I made a mistake." I was confused. Lucas manipulated me, really? I raised an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you knew exactly what you were doing." Her eyes filled with tears. "Jake, I lost everything, so did I," I said, my tone sharper now. "But the difference is, I didn't throw it away." She tried to move closer, but I held up a hand. "I'm happy now, Maddie. I've moved on. You should too." And with that, I closed the door. As I turned around, Rain was standing in the hallway, having seen the whole exchange. "You okay?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. "Yeah," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'm good, and for the first time in a very long time, I truly meant it." The final touch came 2 days later. A video went viral on TikTok. Someone had filmed Lucas getting berated by his manager at the burger joint. Bro thought he was tech royalty, now he's flipping burgers and getting yelled at by a 19-year-old. The comments were merciless. Karma never misses. Couldn't happen to a better guy. Fries with that L. I didn't share it. I didn't need to. But I definitely watched it more than once. For months later, life is good. I was promoted at work and am now leading my own team. And guess who's on it? Elsie. She got a well-deserved promotion, and we've been crushing it, cleaning up the mess Lucas left. Rain and I are solid. Her kids love me, and I've been teaching them how to build forts and play Minecraft. We hike on the weekends and spend our nights laughing over pizza and bad movies. Last I heard, Lucas was still flipping burgers, and Maddie was posting cryptic quotes about toxic men and finding herself on Instagram. Final score, Karma 100, Lucas and Maddie 0. Lucas tried to reach out one last time. You ruined my life, Jake. I didn't even reply. I just sent him a screenshot of his own words from that night. She was never yours to begin with. Guess what, man, I typed. Now she's not yours either. Blocked. My final thought on the matter, never get angry. Get strategic. And always keep the receipts.